Have you ever missed a bus, and it led you somewhere you were never meant to go? 3 passengers, 3 journeys, 3 encounters with a bus that drives straight into the unknown, where time, reality, and life itself twist into nightmares. Tonight, the line between the familiar and the unimaginable disappears. Step aboard, if you dare. Story Part 1. I still remember the sound of the brakes, sharp, metallic, echoing in the empty night. It wasn't like any bus I had ever ridden. The neon sign above the windshield flickered, spelling out a single word: route unknown. I had just missed the last regular bus home, and this one appeared like it was meant for me. Its engine hummed, low and deep, vibrating through the pavement as I climbed aboard. There were only a few seats filled. An old man with hollow eyes staring at the floor, a young woman whispering into her phone, and a boy who looked no older than 10, clutching a worn teddy bear. The moment the bus pulled away from the stop, the streetlights seemed to vanish. One moment, I was on the familiar streets of my city. The next, darkness swallowed everything outside. I pressed my face to the window, but all I could see was an endless ribbon of fog. I asked the driver where we were going. He didn't answer. I realized I hadn't even seen his face. He wore a brimmed hat pulled low, and the corners of his mouth twitched like he knew something I didn't. As we drove, the bus became strangely quiet. The other passengers weren't talking to each other, and the usual hum of a moving bus was replaced by a deep, low vibration, like the heartbeat of some enormous creature. I tried to leave, but the doors wouldn't budge. Even the emergency exit handle felt fused to the metal. Panic began to creep in. The fog outside thickened, forming shapes, shadows that stretched and writhed just beyond the glass. The old man finally spoke. His voice was thin, almost a whisper. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. And when I looked at him, his eyes had gone completely black. I recoiled, and he leaned back as if nothing had happened. The young woman raised her head, and for the first time, I noticed that her phone screen was cracked in a strange pattern, one that looked eerily like the roads outside, twisting and impossible. The boy stared directly at me and smiled, showing teeth too sharp for a child. Minutes, or hours, passed. Time felt distorted. The bus seemed to bend the road, taking turns that shouldn't exist. Mountains rose out of the fog. Forests appeared, then vanished. I saw signs with languages I couldn't read, symbols that felt like they were alive, crawling across the boards. I tried to call someone, anyone, but my phone had no signal. The other passengers didn't react. They didn't even seem to notice the strange world around us. I noticed a faint ticking sound coming from the back of the bus. Every few seconds, it was followed by a soft whisper. "Keep going, keep going." I tried to locate it, but it felt like it was everywhere at once. The bus seemed aware of my fear, adjusting speed, turning corners sharper, dropping into valleys I didn't know existed. Eventually, we stopped at a gas station, or what looked like one. The sign read, "Nothing here," in letters that shimmered unnaturally. The driver turned his head toward me for the first time. His face was pale, featureless, except for a jagged scar that ran across where his mouth should have been. He pointed toward the pumps. "Step out," he said. Against my instincts, I did. The fog outside swallowed the bus. The passengers were gone. The pumps were old, rusted, and leaking some black liquid that hissed as it touched the ground. And then I saw it, a reflection in the glass of the storefront. My reflection wasn't me. My eyes were empty sockets, my mouth stretched in a silent scream. I ran back to the bus, but it had disappeared. The tires had left no marks, and the road behind me was gone too. Panic consumed me as I turned in every direction. The gas station was alone in a void of fog. I heard a voice again, low and metallic, right behind me. "You can never leave." I tried to run, but the ground felt wrong, like I was sinking into a liquid nightmare. Shapes moved in the fog, figures, shadows of people I recognized but weren't really there. Memories of everyone I had ever known began to twist into nightmares. Faces grinned at me, spoke in my voice, called my name. Hours, or was it days, passed. I don't know. I eventually collapsed at the side of the station, exhausted. That's when I saw the bus again, materializing out of the fog like it had never left. The door opened. I was drawn to it, as if it knew I had no choice. As I climbed aboard, I realized I wasn't alone. Every seat was now filled with the missing passengers of my life. Friends, family, strangers, people who had disappeared over the years. The driver's brim tilted back slightly, revealing the empty sockets where his eyes should be. And then he whispered, almost kindly, "Welcome home. You'll be leaving soon, but not as you came." I screamed, but no sound came out. The bus roared to life, the fog thickened, and the world twisted again. Outside the window, I saw my own house, my room, just as it was that morning. And in the reflection, I saw not me, but the boy from the bus, smiling, clutching the teddy bear, waving. When the bus finally stopped, I stepped off, into my own bedroom. Everything was normal. My alarm clock ticked. Sunlight poured through the curtains. My parents called my name. I ran to the mirror and froze. My eyes, they weren't mine. They were black, like the old man's. My mouth itched, stretched into a smile I couldn't control. And in the faintest whisper behind me, I heard the engine of a bus starting again, just outside, waiting for its next passenger. Story Part 2. The street was empty when I saw it. A bus parked under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. The sign above the windshield read "Final Stop," but something about it felt wrong. The doors creaked open, inviting me in. I had missed my usual ride, and against my better judgment, I stepped aboard. Inside, it was quiet, too quiet. Only 3 other passengers were visible. A man in a dark coat, staring straight ahead, a woman scrolling on her cracked phone screen, and a little girl holding a doll that looked decades old. The driver, a tall figure wearing a wide-brimmed hat, didn't acknowledge me. He simply stared at the road as if he had been waiting for someone. The bus started moving, and the city around me vanished. Streetlights, buildings, even familiar intersections disappeared into a thick, swirling fog. The windows reflected nothing but shadows, and my own reflection seemed distorted, my eyes darker than usual. I pressed my face to the glass, trying to make sense of the world outside, but it was like staring into another dimension. "Where are we going?" I asked the driver, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. In fact, I realized he had no face, only smooth, pale skin stretched over bone. A shiver ran down my spine. The other passengers remained unnervingly still. The man in the dark coat muttered something under his breath, but the words didn't make sense. Just a string of numbers, letters, and whispers that seemed to echo in my head. The woman's phone screen glowed with images I didn't recognize. Twisted roads, faces frozen in screams, places that shouldn't exist. The little girl smiled at me, revealing teeth far too sharp. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed. Time had no meaning. The bus seemed alive, bending the road, turning sharply over impossible hills and valleys. Trees with black leaves reached through the fog, their branches grasping at the windows. Shadows moved independently of their sources, crawling across the bus floor toward my feet. I tried to leave. I pulled at the doors, yanked the emergency handle, but it was all fused into the metal. Panic clawed at my chest. Then I heard it, a faint ticking sound from the back, followed by a whisper, "Stay, stay." I turned slowly, and the little girl was standing in the aisle now, her eyes glowing brighter. She pointed at the back of the bus, where a mirror I hadn't noticed before reflected a room filled with hundreds of people I had known. Friends, family, strangers who had disappeared long ago. They were all staring at me with hollow eyes, their mouths twitching into silent screams. The bus slowed, coming to a stop at what looked like a gas station in the middle of nowhere. The sign read "Nowhere," flickering in the fog. The driver finally spoke, his voice a rasp that echoed unnaturally. "Step out, or never leave." I obeyed, trembling. The fog swallowed the bus behind me. The pumps were old and rusted, leaking a black liquid that hissed where it touched the ground. And then I saw it, my reflection in the glass of the store. It wasn't me. My eyes were black voids, my mouth stretched in a scream I couldn't hear. I ran back to the bus. It wasn't there. The road had vanished too. Shapes emerged from the fog, people I recognized but weren't really there. Memories twisted into nightmares. Familiar voices called my name. I ran, but the ground shifted beneath me, sucking me toward the fog. Then, a bus appeared again, glowing faintly in the mist. Its doors opened, and I had no choice. The driver's face was gone, eyes replaced with hollow darkness. He whispered, "Welcome home. You will leave soon, but not as you arrived." I stepped aboard. Every seat was now filled with the missing people from my life, staring at me with hollow eyes. The little girl from earlier held her doll and waved. The bus roared to life and disappeared into the fog. I saw my neighborhood through the windows, my own home. But when I looked in the mirror at my reflection, it was not me. Black eyes, a twisted smile, and behind me, a faint whisper. The bus had returned, waiting for the next passenger. Story, Part 3. It was pouring rain when I missed the last bus home. I trudged along the empty street, my umbrella flipping in the wind. That's when I saw it, a bus parked under a flickering streetlight, like it had appeared out of nowhere. The sign above read Midnight Route, and something about it sent a chill down my spine. I didn't think twice. I was cold, wet, and desperate. The doors opened with a low groan. I stepped in, shaking off water, and immediately noticed the odd stillness. Only a handful of passengers were aboard. A man with a cane, staring at the ceiling, a teenage boy drawing strange symbols in a notebook, and a woman humming a tune that didn't belong to this world. The driver sat perfectly still, his hands on the wheel, face hidden beneath the brim of his hat. The bus began to move, but the streets around us didn't make sense. Buildings twisted unnaturally. The streetlights flickered, casting shadows that stretched into impossible shapes. I gripped my seat. Where are we going?" I asked. The driver didn't respond. As we drove, the bus seemed to react to my fear. The windows fogged up, and I could see fleeting images of people I'd known disappearing in accidents, in tragedies, their faces contorted in silent screams. The teenage boy leaned toward me, whispering in a voice that echoed in my head, "They're waiting." I tried to leave, to open the doors, but they were sealed shut. Even the emergency latch wouldn't budge. The other passengers didn't seem concerned. They were almost content. The woman hummed the same eerie tune, smiling at nothing. The bus dropped off the city and entered a forest that I had never seen. Trees twisted and groaned, branches scraping the windows like claws. Fog thickened outside, and the road ahead seemed to vanish. I realized with horror that the bus had no headlights. It didn't need them. The darkness itself seemed to guide it. Hours, maybe days, passed. Time had no meaning. I started seeing shadows moving inside the bus, quick, fleeting glimpses in the corner of my eyes. Faces pressed against the windows, their mouths forming words I couldn't hear. The cane-wielding man was now standing silently behind me, his eyes black voids, and the boy's notebook had more pages than possible, filled with drawings of the bus, twisting through impossible dimensions. Suddenly, the bus came to a stop. We were in a deserted station, an old abandoned terminal with peeling paint and broken benches. The sign read, "End of the line," flickering like a dying heartbeat. The driver finally spoke, voice low and rasping. "Step out, if you wish to see home again." I hesitated, but the fog outside called to me. I stepped off the bus. The world was empty. The station seemed larger than it should be, stretching into infinity. The air smelled faintly of smoke and rust. And then I saw it, a mirror leaning against a wall reflecting everything except me. My body stood there, but my face was hollow, black where my eyes should be. My mouth was frozen in a scream. I ran back to the bus. It was gone. The road behind me had disappeared. Shapes began emerging from the fog. People I knew but weren't really there, silent, stretching toward me. My heart pounded as the whispers grew louder. Stay with us." Then, out of the mist, I heard the engine. Another bus, identical to the first, appeared. Its doors opened slowly, inviting me back. And for reasons I can't explain, I climbed aboard. Every seat was now filled with missing people from my life. Friends, relatives, strangers who had vanished over the years. They looked at me with empty eyes, smiling impossibly wide. The teenage boy handed me his notebook. Every page was filled with my life, every secret, every fear, every memory I tried to forget. The driver turned his head toward me for the first time. His face was featureless, pale, and twisted. He whispered, "This is your route now. You will arrive, but not as you were before." The bus roared to life, swallowing the fog. I tried to scream, but no sound came. Outside, I saw my neighborhood, my house, Everything exactly as it had been that morning. But when I glanced at the rearview mirror, I saw the little girl from the first bus story, grinning, holding a doll. And then I realized the truth. The bus doesn't take people. It leaves them behind as ghosts to wait for the next passenger. I don't know how long I've been riding. Time doesn't exist here. Every stop is the same. Every face is the same. And outside, waiting in the fog, another bus waits for someone like you. The end.